Coming up next on Tech News Weekly, it's me, Jason Howell, my co-host Mikah Sargent, and we have a show for you. Nick D from Coindesk is our first guest. Joins us to talk a little bit about Biden's executive order that actually seems to further legitimize cryptocurrency. I think it probably depends on which side of the fence you sit on, whether you agree with me or not. Also, Kaye from Protocol talks a little bit about AI and military. When they combine, is it really all about killer robots? We'll tell you, it's not always about that. Plus, a molecular drink printer with a pretty big catch, so you'll want to hear about that. And finally, the impact of gig work businesses leaving Russia. Who does it actually hurt more? All that and more coming up next on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 225, recorded Thursday, March 10th, 2022.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give it a try and see why more than 2 million people have used BetterHelp online therapy. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/TNW.
And by Nureva. Traditional audio conferencing systems can entail lots of components. Installation can take days, and you might not get the mic coverage you need. That's complex, expensive. But Nureva Audio is easy to install and manage, no technicians required, and you get true full room coverage. That's easy economical. Learn more at nureva.com.
And by Streak. Whether you're tracking sales, fundraising, hiring, or support, Streak is a CRM that will help you stay on top of all your processes directly inside Gmail. Get 20% off your first year of their Pro plan, their most popular option, by going to streak.com/TNW. Hello, and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I am Mikah Sargent.
And I'm Jason Howell. You know what I just noticed on this wide shot? The TV kind of looks like the TiVo TV because it's got those things up there.
Yeah, little dealies.
Yeah, it's got little ears.
It's so cute.
That's so random. But there you go. It's Thursday. Welcome to the show. All right. So cryptocurrency advocates are constantly, I would say, I feel anyways, they're constantly looking for signals that are going to like further legitimize its existence. In the past few years, there's been no shortage of those signals. We're seeing them left, right, and center. One big one came yesterday by way of the President of the United States. And joining me to talk about Biden's executive order on crypto is Nikhilesh D, or Nick D, Managing Editor of Global Policy and Regulation for Coindesk. Welcome back, Nick.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hey, it's great to get you back. We appreciate you returning. Let's talk a little bit about this executive order. And I don't know, am I fair in saying that crypto advocates are looking for these signals to legitimize? Because as I was reading that, I was like, oh, maybe I'm speaking for a lot of people, and that's not actually true. But I feel like we're seeing a lot of these lately, and this falls into that camp. What do you think?
No, I think I'd have to agree with you. You know, it's hard to say that there's a stronger sign that, you know, the world that we are aware of is taking, you know, notice of crypto than the sitting president of the United States saying, yes, this is a thing, and our country should have a plan for, you know, overseeing this and making sure that we are not left behind as this technology grows and develops. Yeah,
because I mean, you know, and even on this network, you know, there have been guests in the past who, when crypto comes up as a topic, you either get the, oh, you know, there's a lot of potential. This is very powerful. This is very empowering for, you know, democratizing everything. Or you get the other side, which is like, I don't understand. This is all a scam, blah, blah, blah. And then now we have the president, like you said, the president of the United States, basically, you know, blessing its existence, at least through this executive order. So let's talk about that a little bit. What exactly does it call for? I realize it's not like he issued this executive order and, you know, the massive landscape of crypto is changing overnight, but what is this kind of setting in motion?
No, you're absolutely correct. So what the president signed yesterday basically says that all the federal agencies that might be looking at crypto, which includes the Treasury Department, the Commerce Department, some national security agencies, a couple others, including independent, you know, regulatory agencies, should coordinate their work on developing, you know, guidance for the cryptocurrency industry. It does not itself try to lay out what that guidance should look like. So there's nothing saying, securities law should be applied, XYZ, or banking law should be applied more XYZ. It rather says that these agencies should be, working together. They should have certain tasks that they are now assigned. So the Treasury Department has to compile a report on the future of money. Other departments have to come up with frameworks and reports as well, although they're not quite, explicitly described as such. But basically, the White House is saying, okay, if you're looking at crypto, you should be doing this, and you should tell us what you're talking about and what you're thinking. And, they have some deadlines, 6 to 12 months, I think, is when we're going to start seeing the results of these. But it's really just saying, we have to do, what we're doing, but in a more coordinated fashion that could lead to actual guidance.
It talks, and you write about the future of money. And I'm just kind of curious, from your perspective, covering and knowing so much about this landscape to begin with, when the governmental agency goes in and starts to kind of understand what the future of money might look like, what exactly are they looking for, and what do you think that might look like, given your experience and your expertise in this?
So what's really interesting is that it's talking about the future of money, and it's including digital assets, but this report looks like it might actually look more broadly at the current financial system. And so we're not just talking about, whether or not crypto will replace banks or anything like that. We're talking about, can crypto or digital assets, as they're described in the executive order, help individuals who are currently in banking deserts, people who are not currently served by the financial system that exists today, which is something that the crypto industry has been talking about for quite a while now. I think these questions are probably broader than just the industry itself. There's certainly a lot of, issues that the industry has not yet been able to solve, although people are trying. And, we're talking about financial inclusion. We're talking about being able to access, financial resources, whether you're in areas that, perhaps you don't have a solid internet connection. And so you can't access online payment services like PayPal or, your bank account. Perhaps you're in a place that doesn't have a lot of banks, and other solutions have been postal banking, for example. And so what this report seems to be, what it seems like this report will look at is how to solve these issues and what role could digital assets play in that.
Okay. And you also wrote a little bit about the digital dollar, which obviously this falls in line with exactly what you're talking about. It calls on the report itself, or the executive order anyways, calls on an evaluation of what that actually might become. And I guess when I hear about a digital dollar, what I start to think about is how does something like a air quotes digital dollar compare to what already exists in the crypto space, what we're already used to seeing, or are they one and the same? This is just one version of crypto that is kind of sanctioned by the U.S. government. If that exists, how might it? Because I imagine it will. How might it actually differ from what's out there right now?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's definitely early days. There are a couple different schools of thought on this, right? So you have, one party that thinks a digital dollar or any kind of central bank digital currency will be just a digital form of whatever's issued by the central bank. So we kind of have that today, right? When you're using the dollar, when you're using credit cards or online banking services, you're not physically handing cash over to, whoever. So to one extent, a lot of the banking that we do right now is already digital. If you try to put, the crypto specific, look at that, it's this idea that you'll have a central bank issued currency that's built upon some kind of a blockchain. But critics of this say that, it's going to be centralized. It's not going to be decentralized, which is a core tenet of cryptocurrency. And so, maybe it's not a pure cryptocurrency from that point of view. And then you have the camp that says, private stablecoins or cryptocurrencies pegged to existing currencies like the dollar could be a form of digital dollar, but they need some kind of government, endorsement. And, there's a couple groups right now trying to say that, this system exists, or these types of, stablecoins exist. They can be utilized by the U.S. government, and they can be therefore, turned or modified to better serve, again, the individuals who might need access to these services.
Interesting. Now, as I was kind of like reading through and understanding this and also recognizing that it's, cryptocurrency has been around for a while, and we're just now, here it is 2022, we're now getting to the point to where the U.S. government and, those in D.C. are actually paying enough attention to start really looking into, what is the future here as far as this is concerned. And I start to wonder about the real motivations underneath. I know what you talked about is, like protecting investors. Obviously, that's something that, is worth investigating because crypto is so wild and, in its fluctuations, people can really get themselves in a lot of trouble. So, of course, the government's going to want to, protect the investors if they can. Is this more motivated by controlling the crypto, like getting some sort of control over the industry itself? Or do you feel like this is actually more about kind of embracing what the future could hold, like embracing the future of cryptocurrency? Like on one hand, it feels like a reactionary thing, like, we don't understand this. We've got to get some control. We've got to protect people. But on the other hand, it's embracing the fact that maybe this is the future and we don't want to be left behind. What are your thoughts there?
No, I think you're right that this is to some extent reactionary, but I think it's reactionary to, to me, the key point was in December 2020 when the Trump administration introduced a kind of last minute rulemaking to control or impose certain regulations on unhosted wallets. And the industry was very upset because it was actually technically impossible for unhosted wallets to comply with certain know your customer regulations that are normally applied to just bank accounts or exchanges or companies that have this information to comply with existing bank secrecy law. And it feels like we've had a number of moments over the last year and a half or so where the industry has really made itself known in Washington, D.C. And I think that this executive order is partly an acknowledgement of the influence and the size of the industry. I think part of it is also maybe less control, but more trying to get a grasp of what's going on and preventing another situation where like the subprime mortgage crisis or similar financial crisis where you have this perhaps not entirely well understood financial sector that is getting a lot of money and a lot of attention, but also as you noted has volatility and poses this risk to investors who might not be fully up to speed on what they're doing. And the executive order is kind of a first step to making sure that we don't have a meltdown, at some point that leads to a actual, recession or other kind of financial disaster for a broad swath of consumers.
Yeah, that right there, that resonates pretty deeply. I can imagine that as well. Right now, while everything is particularly topsy-turvy. And to that end, I think my final question here is how much of this is this a bipartisan understanding in DC that this needs to happen, or do some beliefs or ideas about what needs to happen in the realm of finance as relates to cryptocurrency, like is that a bipartisan understanding, or are there two very different sides here? And what is this is this an example of that?
There's definitely a bipartisan desire for clearer regulation around cryptocurrencies. Lawmakers from both parties have introduced bills, and they've introduced joint bills seeking to, establish, for example, more specific tax guidance, or to better understand, whether or not a federal regulator can oversee crypto spot markets, which are currently overseen at the state level in sort of, this fragmented two-tier bank regulation system that we have in the U.S. So there's definitely this bipartisan desire, which what is really interesting to me about this executive order is that there has been bipartisan praise for it. You have Republicans and Democrats both saying that the executive order seems reasonable. One of the concerns was that it might impose regulations just out of hand, and we haven't seen that. And so, it's calling for congressional action, it's calling for agency action, and I think a lot of lawmakers are, I wouldn't say hopeful, but they're looking at this as, not a bad idea. They think that this is working out. Of course, now, we have to wait for the actual regulations and the actual proposals to come out, and that might, change things. But at least for the moment, there's been a lot of praise for this.
At least at the moment, everybody's equally curious. And then, once the things start getting written down as like, all right, here's our plan. That's probably where we'll see a little bit of the division, I'm guessing. But I hope not. I hope everybody is more, on the united front, because we just need a lot more of that in this world. So, Nick D, really appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming back and sharing your insight on this executive order with us. Nick is the managing editor of Global Policy and Regulation at Coindesk. If people want to follow you online, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter. It's Nikhilesh Day. It's Nikhileshde.
All right.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. We'll talk with you soon. Take care.
Have a good one.
Thank you so much. All right, up next, the federal government is looking to the commercial market to boost its AI chops. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give it a try today. Relationships, look, they take work. And a lot of us will drop anything to go help someone we care about. Yeah, you probably, that's me. We'll go out of our way to treat other people well, but when you think about it, how often do we give ourselves that same treatment? This month, BetterHelp Online Therapy wants to remind you to take care of your most important relationship. That's the one that you have with yourself. Whether it's hitting the gym, making time for your haircut, or even trying therapy, you are your greatest asset. So invest the time and effort into yourself like you do for other people. Look, BetterHelp is a really incredible platform. I had the opportunity to give it a try, and you go in and you sign up, and they ask you loads of different questions. Some you'll be familiar with if you've ever sought help via therapy before, but a lot of them are ones that you may be going, I wonder why they're asking me this. They're asking you these questions because they're trying to get a read on who you are, what your values are, what things you sort of pay attention to. And in doing so, they can make sure that you get matched with a therapist who is perfect for you, just the perfect person for you. And that's how it worked for me. Found the person who was right for me. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. In fact, I think it was maybe even fewer than 24 hours. Give it a try and see why more than 2 million people have used BetterHelp Online Therapy. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Tech News Weekly listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/TNW. That's BETTERHELP.com/TNW. Thanks so much to BetterHelp for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, so the federal government, of course, the different agencies that are all tasked with different things, be it defense or revenue or what have you, they all are looking to the commercial marketplace for help in making sure that sort of their AI chops are up to what they should be. And a really interesting profile in Protocol was just recently completed. In fact, I believe just this morning. So joining us to talk about this story is the writer, Kaye. Welcome to Tech News Weekly, Kate.
Thanks so much.
Yes, happy to have you here. So one of the things that kind of kicked off this story was this National Defense Authorization Act of 2022. I was hoping that you could give the listeners just sort of a brief understanding of what the National Defense Authorization Act is and kind of how that plays into what is going on between AI companies and the federal government.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to just lay it out here that I'm not a defense reporter, so my knowledge of this is really based on the fact that it's affecting enterprise AI companies and commercial AI companies that want to get military contracts. So what people really need to understand about that act is that it basically did two things. It called on the Secretary of Defense to basically put out a report or sort of compile some information to say, hey, here's how we'd like to use artificial intelligence and machine learning software, analytics software, things like that, in all these different facets of what the Defense Department does. So not just the stuff that we think about when we think about military, like, drone technology or things like that, but really more mundane businessy stuff, like, how they use analytics and AI in their human resources, in healthcare, in logistics, in predicting when they need to repair a part of equipment. And so that was one thing that it did. And then the second thing that it did that has potentially really important implications for enterprise AI companies like C3 AI in particular is that it basically streamlined the procurement process for tech software, for AI software. Typically when any federal agency, defense, for one, wants to use any kind of tech, they have to go through this like bidding process. They've got to put out a request for proposal, there's a whole long kind of process involved. And this basically said, hey, we're going to make it a lot easier for you for any person within the DoD to use commercial AI technologies.
Okay. So that's what's kind of interesting about this is that it's almost both of the sides sort of being ready for one another. You talk about C3.ai saying, look, we are really trying to get involved in this. And in the past, it's maybe been more difficult, but because of this Defense Act coming at the same time, then both sides kind of get to work with one another. Speaking of C3.ai, I was hoping you could give us just what has C3 AI done up to this point? And then do we know kind of what are the different things, the different roles that it's going to be playing with the government now that it does have a contract with the government?
Yeah, well, they've already had contracts with the government over the past at least few years, if not more. C3 AI is, one of many companies that is really going after defense industry work, one of many enterprise AI companies that also do work with, everyday businesses. And so C3 AI, they've got, they already have stuff underway with, I'm actually looking at a list because like I said, I'm not a defense industry reporter. So I'm like, okay, the Missile Defense Agency, which is basically the Space Force. It's like a subsidiary, as I understand, of the Space Force. They work with them on aircraft maintenance. So you've got like these planes that might be used for surveillance, and they help those planes. They help determine when parts need to be repaired for those planes, for example. And then they've also got a contract that they've done with looking at ballistic missile performance. They've got a contract with the Counterintelligence and Security Agency. And that was just announced. It might have been announced before this, but the CEO of C3 AI, Thomas Seibel, who's kind of a bit of a star in the world of enterprise AI in his own way. He talked about that contract in their recent earnings report last week, and really talked up how they're really going after defense industry contracts. And again, this company also wants to work with everyday business people. Mm-hmm. So it's I think that dynamic's really important to think about, and that's why this story really touches on what that all means and how they play. Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned in your piece that, and you briefly touched on it there at the top, that the Department of Defense kind of had hesitancy in wanting to use these commercial companies because of all of the red tape, if you will, leading up to that. And that act has helped kind of smooth that over. I was hoping, as far as that goes, like what Is it that there's not as much testing now? Do these companies just get to swing in and do their thing? Is it that before, that they've realized now that it was just prohibitively involved in order for these companies to work? I mean, are we getting less tested programs being used by the military and other parts of the government? What has changed so much with the Department of Defense that these, from your perspective on the side of looking at the commercial AI companies, they're now able to swing in and be there kind of quicker than they were before?
Yeah, there's actually two different things that I think might be being conflated here.
Okay.
So it's definitely important to know that the process for procuring and using and these commercial AI technologies is faster now and more streamlined as a result of that act we talked about. But separately, this idea that testing and evaluation of software, like AI software, is necessary, that's actually something that apparently, according to one of the key people at the Joint AI Center within the DoD that's really kind of overseeing a lot of this stuff, she's said, her name is Jane Pinellas, she's said in the past that, DoD leaders have kind of pushed back on testing and evaluation of AI. It's not that they didn't want to use it. It's that, they want to deploy it. They want they want to speed it up. So, and she is one of the people who is saying part of what we want to do by using these enterprise AI companies and by making it easier to work with them is actually going to enable more testing and evaluation and more kind of operationalizing the kind of testing and evaluation that should be really is very important when it comes to AI use within the machine learning operations process, within the process of how they're going to use this stuff. So it's like this is kind of facilitating arguably more ethical approaches and just making sure that, and in the defense, world, they talk about this is going to make our systems more robust. It's actually going to enable asymmetric, basically more leadership and more capability for the U.S. defense to just be better than others, be better against our adversaries. That's what they're arguing. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. The other thing, and I think, the headline touches on this and sort of throughout the piece, you are discussing kind of the disconnect there, if not disconnect, the sort of optics of this situation. I'm curious, with these companies, at times, depending on who you're talking to, if you're talking to a large group of people on Twitter versus individuals, companies working with the military in particular, not just the federal government as a whole, but the military in particular, that can kind of be seen as a negative thing. We've seen Microsoft have to deal with that in the past. I think Google, lots of different companies. Why do you think companies are still going after these military contracts, despite the fact that the optics there might be a little bit tumultuous?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is because they have different audiences, or sort of, like you said, you've got the Twitterverse, or you've got maybe employees within certain companies that have been very vocal and loud about being against the use of AI for military applications. And some people even in everyday business, a source that I talked to for this story who did not want to go on the record said, I'm not going to talk about this. My company has nothing to do with killer robots. Now that's the term that gets thrown around. I mean, I'm calling it killer robot optics. That's kind of that was the first thing that popped in my head when I started thinking more about all of these contracts that these enterprise AI companies are establishing with the military. And so you've got that as the context, as sort of the zeitgeist from more the mainstream understanding of how we think about this stuff. But then you've got the business realities. And when you talk to people in the business world, including, a source who I spoke with from a company called Monitor, which monitors AI, he said, I think the quote was, I'm pretty darn sure these companies think this is good for business. And what he meant was getting a federal contract and basically going through the process, even though the procurement's faster now or will be with some of these companies, they still had to go through a lot, like a year's worth of vetting before they got the okay for the DoD to now more easily work with them. That's, so that's basically, according to the source of mine, hey, this is giving a potential customer sort of another validation point that this is a company that they're good enough for the federal government. They're good enough for me, kind of a thing.
Understood.
So arguably it's better. It's good for them possibly in the long run when it comes to wanting to work with healthcare companies, telcos, the automotive industry, all these other industries that they want to work with. And C3 AI, for example, which has really, really pushed defense more than some of these other companies, they're advertising on NPR every day. I'm an NPR nerd, sort of. I hear their ads, their sponsorship messages every day on NPR. They want to reach everyday business people. So, it's potentially a dichotomy or potentially something that benefits them.
That makes sense.
We don't know.
Yeah, that sort of, hey, look, we made it here, so I think we can definitely handle whatever you've got for us. That part makes sense for sure. Honestly, I think you covered everything there, particularly with the point you brought up about sort of killer robot optics. That, of course, whenever you hear AI and military in the same sentence, you're thinking robotic dogs with brains that are comparable to our own. But a lot of times these AI companies are just working, as you mentioned in your piece, on maintenance stuff, not necessarily the next set of drones or things like that. So that context is important. Everyone should go read your piece over on protocol.com. I am currently on the lookout for your punk rock cookie book. I would love to get that.
No longer available, unfortunately. It was published years ago.
Got to check on eBay or something.
It was called Cookie Chaos.
So cool. If folks want to follow you online, though, where should they go to do so?
Kate Kaye Reports, KATEKAYE Reports.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I'm busy Googling for Cookie Chaos, the book. I got to know, too. All right, coming up, I guess sort of on that tangent, molecular drinks. What are they? And are they too good to be true? Maybe just a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about this. I thought this was really interesting. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Nureva. I'm an audio nerd. I love good quality audio, and I've been in so many online meetings where that conference audio just isn't up to snuff. That's why those people should check out Nureva, and you should too. Complicated and costly. That has been basically what we've gotten used to when it comes to audio conferencing for large spaces, and for forever, right? It's really complicated and expensive to fill a traditional space with the microphones based on the old way of thinking in order to make it sound good. And people, kind of have to change their ways of being in those rooms too in order for them to sound good. Choosing a traditional system, it might entail difficult design software. You're going to have to select from just a wide array of separate microphones, speakers, DSPs, and more. It's no wonder it's not good because that's complicated. Installation usually requires outside technicians. It's often highly invasive and expensive. It could take your room offline for days. And as you can see, the industry was in the perfect position for a leap of technology that can transform and simplify that the way it has, technology has in other sectors. Well, Nureva made that leap. They created the revolutionary microphone mist technology. And this is a patented technology with one or two integrated microphone and speaker bars in a room. You can fill that room with thousands of virtual microphones. Really cool stuff. There are no dead zones. Everyone can be heard from everywhere in the room. Doesn't matter where they are. Meeting and class participants can really just simply talk, be themselves wherever they are, however they are, move naturally in the space, and still be heard by remote participants. Thanks to continuous auto calibration, your rooms are instantly and always ready with optimized audio, and it doesn't require an outside technician. So that's pretty awesome too. Nureva also simplified installation. It's a 30-minute DIY job. That means big savings on time and cost when compared to traditional systems. They simplified management as well. Nureva Console, that actually gives IT the power to monitor, manage, and adjust their systems from anywhere. No need for IT to go from room to room. We shouldn't have to do that, right? So it's all simplified as well. So ask yourself if you want to go with the costly and complicated traditional system that we're all used to being disappointed with, or make the leap to simple and economical Nureva. Learn more at Nureva.com. That's Nureva. Nureva.com. Check it out for yourself. And we thank Nureva for their support and for revolutionizing meeting room audio. Pretty cool stuff. All right. And then we can thank Kana or Kana. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but Kana is a company, a California-based company that has designed a device called the Kana One. I'm going to call them Kana going forward. And basically the idea of Kana One is, and they say this, quote, the world's first molecular beverage printer.
Okay.
So it's a printer for drinks, essentially. And I immediately kind of think of Keurig, right? Like Keurig was one in recent years that did this for coffee. And I was like, whoa, this little machine can, simulate coffee from Starbucks and Pete's and all of these different, things or whatever.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, no, implying heavy use of air quotes around that, right? Like that was the promise.
I agree with you then.
Yeah. The idea here is that most drinks, they say, are 90% water, and then other things added in, like sugar, flavorings, alcohol, that's all added in, but 90% water. Kana spent 3 years analyzing drinks on a molecular level. So I don't really know exactly how they did that. That's what they claim, but okay. They analyzed thousands of beverages, and they isolated, they say, trace compounds for flavor and aroma in the process.
Okay.
So they're really leaning heavily in this, like, we've got science behind us. We're not just like mixing drinks together and going, oh, it kind of tastes like a Coca-Cola. We're saying we broke it down to the molecular level into its like trace components, its compounds, and we can replicate that.
When I was in middle school, I went to the local university and got to work with a scientist. And he showed me this machine. You put a pipette, you pull out some fluid or whatever you're trying to work with, and you put it into this machine, and it spins it so fast that it breaks it up into its different parts.
Oh, okay.
And so then it spits out an analysis of that, and you can see the different molecular components that make up whatever substance you're working with. And then for the purpose there, it was to analyze the different parts. But that is a very real thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if they used a similar kind of machine.
Yeah.
You've got taste scientists and
for sure.
Like ice cream scientists who do all of this kind of stuff on the regular. So so far, I mean, you got to keep going, but so far I'm on board. I'm thinking of like a CMYK printer, except this is just the different components that make up everything.
Yes, in your kitchen. So they created a system that uses an ingredient cartridge or ingredient cartridges rather to, like I said, print out beverages essentially, right? The machine can recreate, by their estimation, thousands of different drinks as a result: iced coffee, iced tea, sparkling tea, energy water, flavored water, sports drinks, soft drinks, hard seltzers, cocktails, even wine, which is weird.
That one's weird.
That one I'm like, okay, but that's where the Keurig comes in, and I'm like, the Keurig quality comes in, and I'm like, I don't think that's going to be good wine. but I'm interested. I'm curious. Users have the ability to tweak sugar levels, to tweak caffeine levels, and to tweak alcohol levels.
Oh, man. I'm kind of on board with this.
And by the way, if you were worried, you got one of these in your kitchen and you have kids, you can password protect the caffeine and alcohol settings. So that's good. All right, we can lock it down.
Or if you've got a boozy partner and you're just like...
You can just ramp it up max. It takes those ingredient cartridges that I was talking about, like that main ingredient cartridge, but there's also a cartridge for sugar and for spirits, right? So yeah, I don't understand how that works with wine. Like, I'm still kind of baffled on that one. And then there is a CO2 cylinder that's added for obvious reasons. And I'm guessing somewhere in there, either you're channeling water, like a water feed, for it to run off of, or you're refilling it with water. I don't know. That I couldn't find. So obviously, they're touting this as like, hey, it's convenient, has some serious benefits for the earth, right? It cuts down on waste and emissions. So you're not using, buying bottles of water or buying bottles of Coke or anything like that. Also, they say it reduces water waste because all that water wouldn't be needed to grow the ingredients themselves, right? So you're not using water to grow the oranges. You're like using an orange flavor thing.
Orange essence. Yeah.
Yes. So, all right. So you can reserve one of these for only $99, Mikah. So, that's your reserve cost.
Okay.
All right.
Just to reserve it.
Just to reserve it.
Okay.
That will apply to the final price. If you're within the first 10,000 orders, I think it's $499. So so you reserve for $99 and you pay another $400. After that, it's $799. It's going to release next year. That's a pretty expensive device,
goes up
right?
Quite a bit, yeah.
And release next year. That's their promise, anyways. Allegedly, we'll see. Here's where the catch comes in, because you knew it was going to come.
Was
right?
it already a catch? It kind of sounds catchy, but go ahead. Yeah.
Well, if you if I paid $800, like, yes, that's a lot of money. But if I truly paid $800 and I got a device that could make any drink and like I never had to replace it and everything, I'd consider it. I'd be like, okay, that's expensive, but it does so much.
It does all of these, yeah.
Right. All those cartridges are actually replaced for free. So they replace the cartridges for free when you need them.
What?
But that's not the catch. The catch is each drink costs a fee.
Hold on.
Hold up.
You're telling me I go through it and there's a little price next to it. Oh, I want wine. That'll be $5.99.
Yes. So they say 29 cents for sparkling water. That's like the low end, right? Up to $2.99 for a cocktail.
How are they? Okay, someone would hack this machine.
Yeah, totally. I have to imagine that would happen.
Because you've got it right.
Or someone would try anyways.
What they should do is a subscription service that ultimately covers the cost of those cartridges being sent to you.
Ah, that would work. That would work for me.
Rather than do it this way. Because this I think, hits on all of the wrong parts within us where we feel like what is ours is ours. Yeah. And so to have, that's the thing, like I've got all of the things inside of this machine to make what I want. It's not like they're using some sort of molecular transport service that I'm paying for to get the ingredients from some other, some universe connected to ours. It's all right there. So I could like break open the cartridge and break open this and sort of pour them together and make my own. That's where that doesn't feel right. If they charge, $50 every quarterly, so at the end of the year you pay $200, and with that they'll send you the cartridges as you run out of them. That makes me feel more comfortable than every time I want a sparkling water from this thing, I'm paying 29 cents. I don't want a vending machine in my own home.
That's kind of what it feels like, right? It feels like you're paying $800 for a vending machine.
Yeah. Oh, I was so on board with this.
Yeah, I know. It's a bummer. And I'm getting flashbacks to Juicero as well.
Yeah.
That whole thing.
At least with that though, you would go and buy the cartridges as you needed them.
Right.
So again, it wasn't as if the ingredients were already right there in your home. After you ran out, you went and got the new ones. And yes, they had the DRM, so to speak, copy protection, so to speak, where you had to use the Juicero cartridges. But again, you were paying every time you needed a new one. It wasn't that once you had it, you had to pay. So here's the thing. Like, I was completely on board because I was thinking about all of these recent companies. In fact, one of the sponsors on the network, Blue Land, instead of spending a bunch of money on shipping what is mostly water, and then also the environmental impact of sending what is mostly water, you get a tablet that has all of the chemicals that you need. You add your own water to it, and then you shake it and it's good to go. Yeah. That is a very smart way of doing things. I think about that a lot. Every time I get a new thing, whether it be shampoo or, I switched from using liquid chlorine bleach to getting bleach tablets because, again, I'm thinking about how much I was just paying for water and also having Amazon deliver what is mostly water. All these different things that could just be the chemicals themselves. I'm even on board with wine because if you think about it, what is anything that we consume but a grouping of different molecules, a grouping of different ingredients that come together to make a thing. Yes, it doesn't have the special magic of what it's sort of like listening
the
on
age of the vine.
Yeah, listening on vinyl versus listening to music that's not like. I know that there's for some people there's something to that.
Yes,
but if somebody were to take a glass of wine from, 1876 and put that in that machine that I talked about earlier, break it up into its component parts, and then take all of those component parts and put them together here, made right now, not however many years ago that is. I don't do that math. That's the same thing to me. Yeah. And so I would be on board. Like, I hit this button and it makes me a glass of red wine that is just the same molecular makeup as something else. That's a great idea. So that had me legitimately, as you're talking, I was like, I may go by the end of the day and plunk down that $99 because I think this would be a cool thing. Yeah. But the second you tell me I'm basically paying for a vending machine to be installed in my home, I'm outie.
Sorry to do that to you. But it shows that it's possible and that maybe someone else will come along and actually do this. What it reminded me of was that old Jetsons cartoon. And they had
this is the future I want to live in.
I had to look up the name of it because I couldn't remember the name. It's the food Aracacycle, I believe, was the food machine where you basically told it I want pizza and it generates a pizza and gives you the pizza. So we're getting closer and closer to that, but we're not quite there yet. Yeah, the idea of having a vending machine in my kitchen, that would just tick me off every time.
Absolutely. I hope that what happens is they see that Kana gets a bunch of gets a lot of feedback about this and that they do switch to a subscription model instead.
Yeah. That makes more sense to me.
I would consider that at least for, a couple of years, just to give it a try.
Yeah.
This future is the one that I want to live in, but it is not the future where, again, unless those ingredients are being teleported, then
then there's a service tied to those ingredients.
Yeah, exactly. Versus it's right there in my home.
Yeah, I already have it.
It would be like me taking the ingredients I have in my cabinet to make some chocolate chip cookies and then like throwing $5 out the window and then mixing all of those ingredients together to make cookies. It's like I had to pay for them all coming together, except I did it myself. So I just don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, and as I think about it now, so if they have one main ingredient capsule or cartridge or whatever that generates most of this stuff outside of the sugar, the alcohol and everything. So they must be doing some sort, doing the math around this and thinking like, different liquids, different drinks in this world have different value, right? Something that's an alcoholic beverage is just more expensive than a sparkling water inherently.
Yeah.
So they would have to then do the math on those cartridges to be sure that they're covered and getting their fair share for it. So those cartridges probably would end up being really expensive. That would be my guess if they were actually selling them because they, but at the same time, like, what does it matter? What does it matter what the real world cost of alcohol actually is? Create your platform that like totally, bypasses what we've come to expect out of what we pay for drinks. And you got a slam dunk. You're selling those like left, right, and center because people are like, well, heck yeah, why wouldn't I get this? Because I no longer have to spend $3 or $4 for a cocktail.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll come eventually.
The chat was asking, it was a chromatograph. Yeah, that's what I used was a chromatograph to separate. Okay. I don't think it goes all the way to molecule Maybe very expensive ones do, but it broke it up into its chemical components, which I think would be all that this would need to do. So yeah.
Interesting.
This could be so cool, but
could be. But you know what? It's one in potentially,
yeah, there are other companies who could do this.
Other companies that might do this and maybe do it differently. So,
because again, on the one hand, I understand their thinking in terms of what people do or don't like. And so to get those cartridges shipped to you for free probably does feel good. I just think it runs counter to the way at least my brain works.
Yeah.
That they put exactly.
If I have to pay per drink.
Per drink, yeah. They put the savings in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Because then, I mean, that almost kind of encourages people to not use it as often, which means that you're not getting the value of those cartridges shipped for free because you're not using it as often.
Yeah.
So then really the company is saving money in that way because they've discouraged you from using it as often after they've already got the money from you for buying it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Wah, wah, wah.
Try again.
There we go. Exactly.
Interesting story, though. Very cool. All right, up next, we're going to take a look at the impact of big tech pulling out of Russia. But first, I do want to tell you about Streak, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. As a startup founder or an entrepreneur, you know what it's like running your business from your inbox. Whether you're tracking sales, you're fundraising, you're hiring, or you're providing support, Streak is a CRM that will help you stay on top of all of your processes directly inside of Gmail. You can use Streak's free email tools to check if your emails have been opened and send bulk emails with automated follow-up emails to improve your response rates. Since Streak is built inside of Gmail, it's part of your everyday workflow, so you can see details about your leads, customers, and investors right there alongside your email. No more switching between Gmail and other tools. Whether you're prospecting for new customers, you're raising a fundraising round, you're growing your team, you're managing support tickets, you can use Streak pipelines to track all your processes directly from Gmail. Getting started is easy as well. You can set up your first pipeline in 2 minutes and customize each pipeline based on your needs. Streak makes it easy to collaborate by automatically sharing emails and notes with anyone on your team. And Streak was recognized as Google's Technology Partner of the Year and is used by thousands of founders, entrepreneurs, and small business owners. Look, Streak, the idea that I don't have to open up a bunch of different windows and swipe between those spaces and try to find the thing that I was looking for, that it can all happen right there. Like, my email is one of the first things that I look at in the morning whenever it's time for work. And so not having to bounce to a bunch of different things and just having all of the work that I want to do right there in that one place, that's brilliant. And that's what Streak does for you. So try out Streak today. It's free to use on your own or use the Pro Plan with your team. You can get 20% off your first year of their Pro Plan. That is the most popular option by going to streak.com/TNW. That's streak.com/TNW. For how much? 20% off. You got to check it out. Streak.com/TNW. And of course, thank you, Streak, for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, so I found this story on the Washington Post this morning. It was one that I was thinking about sort of from a macro perspective, but this one goes a little bit micro, and I think that it's an important thing to understand. So as different countries work to sort of lay down sanctions on Russia, as different countries are doing what they can from the economic perspective to tell Russia that what it's doing is wrong, big tech has hopped on board that train in different ways. We've seen lots of different companies saying, no, we're not doing business in Russia. Apple takes sales of products out of Russia. Microsoft has jumped in there as well. Lots of different companies all saying, in whatever way their services or their products work, we are not doing business in Russia. But it's important to understand at the same time, or at least be aware of the fact that there's a difference between Russian leadership and Russian citizens in many cases, and the effect and impact that this is having on individuals. The Washington Post article talks about 3 different companies, Upwork, Twitch, and OnlyFans, as an example of some of the services in the country that folks use to make money, and how pulling out of the country has led to an impact on those different people. The article talks about Arena, a 22-year-old illustrator in Russia who worked via the Upwork platform, which is a way for people to find freelance folks in all sorts of different fields, and for freelance folks to find clients to basically connect and have business that way. And so Arena, who started using Upwork last year, suddenly was unable to do so because over the weekend, as we record this show, Upwork said, no, we're not working with Russia. And that has also happened to the quote tens of thousands of Russian video game streamers on Twitch, because Twitch is not currently processing payments for those streamers. And according to Rolling Stone magazine, OnlyFans also is not paying workers currently through that. And a lot of this is because, so a lot of this ends up being that these companies, even if they didn't sort of make this stand themselves, would not have been able to pay their the people that are there, because when you think about how this all works, yes, there's Twitch, there's Upwork, there's OnlyFans, but they use payment processors who are sort of above them, who also then above them use major card companies like MasterCard and Visa. So when MasterCard and Visa stopped their payment systems there, and when Wise, which is a London-based company for cross-border payments, and Payoneer, which is a New York City-based services provider, and PayPal, which of course works all over the world, all ceased business in Russia, then those companies weren't going to be able to process many of those payments anyway. So that resulted in then those companies going, well, we kind of can't process those payments. Let's also sort of optically say, hey, look, we are taking a stand here. And so basically this points to kind of this, there are 2 kind of parts of the situation. One is gig work in general, which is this idea that folks are not necessarily being employed by companies anymore, but are sort of working with companies, as it were. And so Arena, the 22-year-old illustrator, doesn't work for Upwork. She just uses Upwork to find jobs. Someone who streams on Twitch does not work for Twitch, but uses Twitch to get their stuff out there. And so with just, a snap of a finger, all of these folks who were making a living suddenly are not able to make a living. And it's kind of frightening how much power these gig companies have over so many people's livelihoods. And when we also look at the impact then on that individual level, some of these folks are trying to get out of the country, but now don't have the money to do so. There was one person that they talked to in the piece who asked to remain anonymous due to fear of government reprisal, who said, I'm looking to get a loan now so that I can get out of this country, so that I can A, go back to work, and B, not be here where things are not good. What's interesting too is some of these communities have come together in different ways to try and figure out other ways of making money when they need to, or helping each other out. And so I'm going to quote from the article. It says, after PayPal announced Saturday that it would suspend services in Russia, users began compiling lists of payment providers that were still serving Russians, noting that these sweeping policy changes also affected workers in Ukraine, and offering links to a Telegram channel and Google spreadsheet that kept track of shifting company policies. If there's one thing to be said for gig workers, one adjective that can be used to describe them, it's scrappy for sure. And I just can't imagine having to be scrappy in this scenario and in this specific case.
It sounds impossible. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't know what to do. And it's a miracle that any of them are able to, organize as much as they can with everything being shut down. And just on Security Now earlier this week, they were talking about how Russia may possibly be considering sort of separating itself. Its internet would exist only within the country, and that Russians would not be able to even go on the global internet.
Right.
What do you do in that point? I mean, all of these gig workers who stream their videos, in the case of Twitch or OnlyFans, and in the case of Upwork, who European companies and U.S. companies who get workers from these other places because they can get them for less expensive than the people who work in their own countries.
A lot of that.
There's no connection now.
Right.
That's the part that I think is it's important to remember those things as we talk about it. And I want to note too, Ukraine's Minister of Digital Transformation just said, had this to say about this situation. Said, the gig workers are out of work, quote, just because they are silent when their dictator kills the people of our country. Fedorov wrote Monday on his Telegram channel. This is a courageous decision of the Upwork team, and asked other gig work platforms to follow suit. So from the perspective of Ukrainian leadership, this is seen as an altogether good thing, and that the country as a whole is suffering. I just think that it is important for all of us to look at the macro and the micro.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And we talked a little bit about this last week. And obviously this, all this stuff is moving so quickly. Mm-hmm.
Every day.
Every day it's advancing. And I feel like my opinion last week is a little different than my opinion this week, right? Like last week I was like, well, yeah, I mean, what else are you going to do? Cut this stuff off, because that's going to, impact Russia more than anything else. What else does anyone have the power to do? These companies have the ability to kind of put the vice grip a little bit on from a financial standpoint and cut off these services. But over the last week, my mind has really shifted. It's really hard, because it is holding the citizens themselves. They're the ones that really end up suffering largely, either because they don't have typical distractions to take their mind off of just how crummy things are right now. Mm-hmm. Crummy is a censored word, a self-censoring word, because I wanted to say something else. Yeah. But also, being able to support themselves, and like you said, be able to work to have the money to be able to flee and protect themselves. And I mean, the crummy thing about it, there truly is no easy answer here. There is no answer that makes it that makes this a non-problem anymore, and it just sucks.
It just sucks. Yeah.
I don't have anything more prescient to say than that. It's really depressing to think about the impact that all of this has on the citizens who live inside of Russia, who are just being held to account for the fact that they have a really, lame person controlling the country. And that's just all there is to it. I don't know what else to say as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. I just think
it's depressing.
Maintaining that awareness of the macro and micro, I think is what's
that awareness. Yeah, that's important. And you know what? And I'm prime example. It's okay that we change our minds.
Yes,
it's okay that being open to be able to understand the things that we felt like we believed pretty strongly, and then recognize, oh, well, wait a minute, there was actually a flaw in that, and be able to kind of change our minds and have that conversation, outside of being defensive about it. So, it saddens me to think about everything that's happening, with the Ukraine and Russia right now.
And don't forget to sift. Stop, investigate the source, find better coverage, trace claims, quotes, and media to the original context.
Thank you. Yes. Good to remember. All right, well, we've reached the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. You can always catch us every Thursday. We do a new show each and every Thursday. twit.tv/TNW. That's the page on the web that you can go to subscribe. You can also find our episodes there. But really, if you're watching it on the page, just subscribe. Then you don't have to think about going anywhere for it. It'll appear on your phone. like, you know what? RSS is a pretty cool thing, it turns out. So do that. twit.tv/TNW.
If you'd like to get all of our shows ad-free, there is a way to do that. You just join Club Twit, twit.tv/ClubTwit. For $7 a month, not only will you support us directly, which is incredibly helpful, but you also get access to all of our shows with no ads. You get access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else. This coming Thursday, so next Thursday, I will be talking with Patrick Delahanty.
Awesome.
All about what he does at Twit, but also just getting to know him. I'm planning on doing that once a month, talking to some folks behind the scenes here at Twit. Very excited about that.
Nice.
And then also you get access to the Discord server, which if you're going, what? Oh, Discord server, what's that? If you've ever used Slack or Microsoft Teams, you'll be familiar with the way that this works. It's just a place where you can go and chat with your fellow Club Twit members, but also those of us here at Twit. In fact, Patrick just commented in the Discord saying, hey, that's me. Yes, it is you, Patrick. All of that you can get super awesome by going to twit.tv/ClubTwit. $7 a month. And I should also mention you get this really nice, warm, fuzzy feeling of being able to support us directly. We heard that some folks wanted to support individual shows and weren't that concerned about all the extra bonus features. And so we've made that available to folks who use Apple Podcasts. You just look up Tech News Weekly, you find the audio version of the show, and subscribe for $2.99 a month. By doing so, you'll get the ad-free version of the audio feed right there in Apple Podcasts. And if you want to follow me on social media, I am at Mikah Sargent on many a platform, at Mikah Sargent, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. And you can check me out on Saturday for The Tech Guy, the radio show heard around the world, where we being Leo Laporte, myself, answer questions all about tech support and surrounding topics. And on Tuesdays, where I host iOS Today with Rosemary Orchard. Jason Howell, where can folks find you?
Well, Twitter's probably the best place, at Jason Howell, or here on the Twit Network. Do All About Android every Tuesday, twit.tv/AAA. Actually, this Tuesday, Ron Richards, co-host on the show, happened to be in town, so he was sitting next to me. And I think my one realization there, and also coming here and doing this with you, is that we're so used to, I've been so used to doing these shows in front of a screen in my house, that coming back here, it's almost sensory overload again. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I had this very controlled thing. It's everything I needed was on the screen. And then suddenly Ron's sitting there and I'm looking over instead of looking forward. It was it's a skill that I have to relearn again.
Reawaken.
But anyways, check out that show. I had a lot of fun with Ron in town for the show. So twit.tv/AAA. Big thanks to John for all the work that you do on the show each and every week. Appreciate you, John. Also appreciate Burke and the work that he does behind the scenes. And we always appreciate you for watching and listening. We'll see you next Thursday on Tech News Weekly. Bye, everybody.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I'm joined by Tarek Malik, the editor-in-chief over at Space.com, in our new This Week in Space podcast. Every Friday, Tarek and I take a deep dive into the stories that define the new space age. What's NASA up to? When will Americans once again set foot on the moon? And how about those samples from the Perseverance rover? When are those coming home? What the heck has Elon Musk done now? In addition to all the latest and greatest in space exploration, we'll take an occasional look at bits of spaceflight history that you probably never heard of, and all with an eye towards having a good time along the way. Check us out on your favorite podcatcher.